Hi there, this is John McCririck and I want to welcome you to episode 6 of the Ask Big Mac show. Now, before I get started, as I always do, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Right? You've gone and done that. Now, Booby, come on, let's get on with the show. And the first question, you always make them very difficult, those first questions, so I want a nice, easy, gentle one that anyone who's got no brain could answer. Come on, Booby.
This is difficult. Patrick Cooney on Twitter asks, if you were in sole charge of Greyhound Racing, how would you turn around the steady decline in our great sport?
Well, Patrick, it's a question that far greater brains than me have been thinking about, and it really is terrible when you think, you know, I remember the great days at the White City, the Greyhound Derby, packed in right round the stadium where Chataway and Cutts ran in the athletics and all that kind of thing, and how it's sort of gone downhill since then. I think there were 15, 16 tracks in London, for instance. I went to at least a dozen of them, and now we've virtually only got Wimbledon at all, and Wimbledon's under threat, as we all know, the home of the Greyhound Derby. So it is very hard. There is a lot to sell about Greyhound Racing, and they're doing the bet. The old days of just turning up in a flat hat and a pie, those days are over in all sports, all activities, because we've advanced so much. So it's looking after people, giving them attractive, appealing, modern surroundings. That's the problem with Wimbledon, isn't it? It's the track is not derelict, but it's almost defunct, the track, and they're hoping to build a new stadium, and that's very, very important, and restaurants and all that sort of thing. I think it's a great place to bring people, to have hen and stag parties, to bring, if you've got a bird, bring her along, and they like the dogs, and there's lots of attractions you can have with Greyhound Racing. You can see on the Racing Post TV virtually every race. You can record it and at other meetings as well, and can see them so much. The form is available, which it never used to be. But there's so many other attractions now. Remember, in the old days, the only ways you could bet were horses, greyhounds, and the football pools. Right, one or two people went to casinos, but only very, very few casinos then, and a few people had credit accounts with the bookmakers, but generally only by going to the races could you bet before betting shops opened in 1961. Since then, of course, the counter attractions now, betting is 24 hours a day, the football, virtual racing, poker, whatever you like, so much more to bet on. Those who need to have a bet haven't got to go Greyhound Racing. So it's got to, on its own, try and attract people to come, and that is very, very difficult. And I think it's a great place to go. It's a great way of spending an evening and have your mates and have good fun and all that sort of thing. But then we're a total minority. What would I do to make Greyhound Racing? Well, they do all they can, don't they? They offer cheap entry, or virtually no, having to pay very little or nothing to go in, and you get a pint and a pie and a race card and maybe a free bet. And they try all those kind of things. Getting the message out is difficult. There's virtually no publicity for Greyhound Racing now. As I said, it's on the Racing Post TV, and Sky do a terrific job. Without the Sky, so once a week, for many weeks, they have a Greyhound meeting covered on Sky, and they do a terrific job in promoting it, but a minority interest, a small audience. It is difficult to know. Anybody could produce a sort of a magic solution. What is it? I just don't know. I think the competition really has overwhelmed Greyhound Racing. And then, of course, we lost one of our best stadiums, Walthamstow. I don't want to name check and all that sort of thing, but I spoke to the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. It was his decision in the end, could decide it either way, and I think he was very pro keeping Walthamstow. And in the end, he gave the bid that went in. It wasn't commercially viable, I suppose, in the end, and so Walthamstow went. Now we've only got Wimbledon, the only Greyhound track in London, and I've said to the Mayor, I said, are you going to be the Lord Mayor of London, who would go down in history as the man who finally lost Greyhound Racing to the capital? Is that going to be your legacy? So I appealed to him on that kind of line. So we've still just got Wimbledon, but it needs much more. Tracks have been reopened, and stadiums have been made more attractive and better. But it's to get the people just don't know about any greyhounds at all now. It is the competition, the betting alternatives, so much more for the punter pound. The Greyhound Racing is in decline. We just hope it can be turned around and at least stabilised and maybe start to grow and everything. Families to be brought in, the dogs with their colours, the red, blue, white, all that kind of thing, the black, orange, and then the stripes. So it's easy for people to remember and to pick out. There's a lot going for greyhound racing, but to try and sell it is very difficult. If I had a solution, and I'm normally a big head and think I know the answer to everything, I just don't know what the answer to greyhound's problems. And of course now it's attacked by the animal lobby as being cruel. You've got an awful business that you go and tell them if there wasn't any greyhound racing, there'd be no greyhounds. Nobody's going to sort of breed greyhounds just for themselves. It's for racing. Although they do make tremendous pets, and there is a huge campaign for retired greyhounds to try and to get them homes to look after them, but that's been a weak area. What happens to these warriors when they do retire, when they're no longer able to race? There's a lot of problems, and there's a lot of bad publicity, and some people in the sport don't help themselves as well, and there's the odd scandal brought in. Everything is sort of conspiring against greyhound racing. The positives aren't being brought out. But you come to me for a solution, and how wise you are to come to of all fonts of information and knowledge. That's my good self, of course, but I just can't give an answer to that. I just don't know how we can possibly save greyhound racing. Just let's hope we do. We need to, but my goodness, I miss all those tracks in London and elsewhere that have closed down, even in my short lifetime. So it's very sad to see it happening, but a lot of people are working very hard, so let's hope greyhound racing can survive and maybe even thrive again. Right, Booby, another question.
Peter Donald in Facebook asks, best ride you've seen a jockey give a horse?
Well, I have to say it because it affected me so much, but it's the 1993 2000 Guineas Symphonic. Pat Edry rode it, and a lot of controversy had happened before, and I've been going on since the previous September and backed it as well, and lots of people took part of the bet to go at 8-1 for the Guineas. It was odds on over the winter. It was then beaten in its first race in France by King Mambo. Actually, it beat it by a short head in a trial race in France, and King Mambo turned out to be a very good horse indeed in his own right, and very heavy ground, which was against Symphonic. So he came to Newmarket virtually because I and other people have been shouting and screaming Symphonic, and people were for and against it. And it came to the race, and he was quite magnificent. He came from last to first, and he ran away from what's called Barathea. Barathea, trained by Luca Comani, went on to win in a Breeders' Cup. So it was a terrific 2000 Guineas. And the burst of speed that he showed, just look up on your YouTubes and all your machines, just look at the 93 2000 Guineas and see how that horse, at that time it was a record time, absolutely swept to victory from last to first. Absolutely, how Edry stayed so calm. I was shaking with anticipation and fear, and saying, why on earth he last? Come on, move on. Anyway, he did, and it was a beautiful sight to watch. And I always say now, whatever people, and of course nobody can argue either way, it's just a matter of opinion, that had that day, Symphonic on that day, met the great Frankel on his day when he ran away, made all the 2000 Guineas 2 or 3 years ago, I think the horse that would have won it would have been Symphonic, who would have sat on Frankel's tail and come and done him. Now, we'll never know that. Frankel's a great, great horse. Of course he is, 14 unbeaten. Symphonic wasn't. He went off very quickly, was well beaten at Goodwood afterwards. But I think Symphonic on that day was unbeatable in a racehorse. To do what he did was so spectacular, so sensational, and I needed that so badly. Pat Edry, his ride on Symphonic, my number one. That's for me. Booby, next question.
Next question, final question. When you met Jenny Booby, was it love at first sight, and how did you propose? This I've longed to know, from Debbie Brigden, I spoke.
Well, Debbie, I can tell you this. It wasn't love at first sight. It was at a party. And I'd always, I'd never had any animals and never had any dogs. And my best friend had a Labrador, always had Labradors. And Booby was at the party, and she had this yellow Labrador called Simon. And I fell in love with the dog. Absolutely, he was a fantastic dog, was Simon. So in the end, I realised the only way I could get hold of Simon was to go out with the Booby. So the trouble is, I couldn't take Simon away from her, because she was at the end of the bit of string. So I had the Booby, so I'd say, well, Booby, you may or may not be very attractive. That's a matter of opinion. And you may or not be very clever and all that sort of thing. But Booby, you've got Simon the dog. So I went along, got Simon, Booby came along with her, and of course she begged me after that. Pleading with me on her knees, sobbing, begging, please marry me. You know, I need you so much. I can't live without you. All that kind of life. And in the end, I said, well, I'll give you 24 hours as long as I can have Simon. So that was the deal that was arranged. So we got on with it, and it was slightly embarrassing because we had our wedding and the reception. And when we sent out the invitation to the reception, I said at the head of it, Simon the dog will be your host. Now, her mother wasn't very happy with this, so it was a bit understandable. But Simon the dog, he was the host at the wedding reception. Wonderful dog. We've had Labradors ever since, and we absolutely love our yellow labbies, and we got one black labbie as well now. But I think without the Labrador, whether I would have fallen for the Booby, but of course she fell for me. That's the real truth of the matter. She is so fortunate, and she realises it. Booby, do you realise how fortunate you are to have your wonderful husband? Come on, Booby, listen to the Booby here. How lucky are you to have your man?
No comment.
No comment, Booby. Oh dear, this is absolutely appalling. You should be eulogising how wonderful I am. So that's the Booby, how fortunate she is. So thank you all for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and keep sending in your questions on my sex life as well. Send them all in on Twitter @RealMcCririck and Facebook /RealMcCririck by adding #AskBigMac. And if I didn't answer your question this week, as I keep on saying, keep on sending them in. Get them in now, and one day you'll be so fortunate I'll answer your questions. And Booby, we must get another Labrador quickly or you'll be out!